History has a way of revealing the darkest corners of human nature. In our previous episodes, we've journeyed through some of humanity's most brutal methods of punishment. But what you're about to witness today, well, let's just say it makes our previous episodes look tame in comparison. Before we begin, a warning: what you're about to learn isn't just disturbing, it's the kind of content that might keep you awake at night. These aren't just stories, they're real historical accounts of how far humans would go to inflict suffering on others. If you haven't seen parts 1 and 2, you might want to check those out first. But for those brave enough to continue, let's descend even deeper into history's darkest chambers of horror. Number 3, the Iron Maiden, Kiss of Death. We begin our journey in medieval Europe with a device that embodies the era's capacity for creative cruelty, the Iron Maiden. Standing over 7 feet tall, this human-sized sarcophagus wasn't just a coffin, it was an intricate instrument of torture designed to create a death as slow as it was excruciating. Picture yourself being led to this imposing metal cabinet. Its front swings open to reveal an interior lined with dozens of carefully positioned iron spikes. But here's where the true horror begins: these weren't randomly placed. Each spike was meticulously engineered to pierce non-lethal areas of the body, ensuring that death wouldn't come quickly. The victim would be forced inside, and as the door slowly closed, each spike would begin its gradual penetration. The first sensation? Sharp, burning pain as the metal pierces your flesh. But that's just the beginning. The spikes were positioned to avoid vital organs, turning what could have been a quick death into hours, sometimes days, of unimaginable agony. But the physical pain wasn't even the worst part. Imagine being trapped in complete darkness, your body impaled from multiple angles, unable to move without causing more spikes to tear into your flesh. The psychological torture of being entombed alive, knowing that each breath, each slight movement, brings new waves of agony. This was the true mastery of the Iron Maiden's design. Some versions even included a small window at eye level, forcing the victim to watch the reactions of spectators as they suffered. Their screams would echo through the metal chamber, creating a haunting symphony that would echo through the town square. Number 2, rat torture, the nightmare within. Our next method of torture preys on one of humanity's most primal fears: being eaten alive. Rat torture, while deceptively simple in its execution, represents perhaps the most psychologically devastating form of torture ever devised. The setup begins innocently enough: a large metal container, a few hungry rats, and a restrained victim. But what follows is a demonstration of how well torturers understood both human and animal psychology. The victim would be stripped and restrained, unable to move. The container, filled with starving rats, would be placed on their bare abdomen. Then comes the truly diabolic part: heat would be applied to the top of the container. As the temperature rises, the rats, desperate to escape, would have only one way out: through the victim's flesh. Imagine feeling their first desperate scratches, knowing what's coming next. The rats, driven by survival instinct, would begin to gnaw through flesh and muscle, burrowing deeper into the body. The victim would remain conscious throughout most of this process, feeling every bite, every tear, every moment of their body being invaded. What makes this method particularly horrifying is its exploitation of multiple fears: the fear of rats, the fear of being eaten alive, and the complete helplessness of being restrained while it happens. Witnesses report that the psychological breakdown often occurred before the worst physical damage. The mere anticipation of what was to come was enough to break even the strongest minds. Number 1, the rack, Symphony of Shattered Bones. Finally, we arrive at perhaps the most infamous torture device in history, or the rack. While it might seem simpler than our previous entries, don't let its basic design fool you. This was an instrument that turned the human body's own structure against itself. The victim would be laid on a wooden frame, their wrists and ankles secured by strong ropes or chains. At one end, a lever mechanism would begin to rotate, slowly pulling the body in opposite directions. The first phase was excruciating but survivable, the joints popping, muscles stretching beyond their limits. But then came the true horror. As the tension increased, victims would begin to hear their own body betraying them. First, the subtle popping of smaller joints. Then, the louder cracks of major joints dislocating. Finally, the devastating sound of bones splintering under the relentless pressure. The genius, if we can call it that, of the rack lay in its adjustable nature. Torturers could increase or decrease the tension at will, playing a horrific game of pain management. They could bring a victim to the brink of unconsciousness, then release the pressure just enough to ensure they remained aware of every moment. Many victims of the rack who survived were never the same. Their bodies, permanently elongated and broken, served as living reminders of the price of defiance. Some accounts suggest victims grew several inches taller, not through natural growth, but through the forcible separation of their joints and bones. These methods reveal something profound about human nature, both our capacity for cruelty and our ability to survive unimaginable suffering. Each punishment was designed not just to kill, but to send a message that would echo through generations. If these dark chapters have taught us anything, it's the importance of remaining vigilant against our own capacity for cruelty. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because our journey through history's darkest moments is far from over. Until next time, remember, the past isn't just a collection of dates and events, it's a mirror that reflects our own humanity, in all its light and darkness.